What it means when all the birds in your yard go completely silent at once. You were outside. Everything was normal. Birds singing, feeder busy, the usual sounds of your yard filling the air. And then, nothing. All of it stopped. At once. Like someone turned off a switch. No warning, no gradual quiet. Just sudden, complete silence. And you felt it before you understood it. Something in your gut told you that silence wasn't normal, that it meant something. You were right. Welcome back to Backyard Bird Mind. If you're new here, make sure you subscribe because what you're about to learn will change the way you look at every bird that visits your yard. That silence has a name. It has a cause. And once you understand what's actually happening in those moments, you will never hear your yard go quiet again without knowing exactly what the birds are telling you. Today, we're breaking down 7 reasons why every bird in your yard goes completely silent at once, what each one means, what's triggering it, and what you should do when it happens. Some of these will surprise you. One of them will stop you cold. Stay with me until the end, because the last one is the silence most people never forget. This is the most common reason and the most immediate. It's not a sound, it's the absence of one. And it is one of the most sophisticated alarm systems in the natural world. Birds don't go silent out of confusion. They go silent out of precision. A singing bird is a located bird. When a hawk, an owl, or a prowling cat enters the area, every bird within range understands immediately that making any sound is the equivalent of raising a hand and saying, "Here I am." So they stop, all of them, simultaneously. The trigger spreads faster than you can track it.
Research from the University of Montana found that alarm responses in mixed bird flocks can propagate across an area in under 2 seconds, faster than any individual bird could process and react to the threat on its own. What you're witnessing is a collective nervous system functioning at a level of coordination that still surprises researchers. If your yard goes silent and you look up, look carefully. The threat is almost certainly still there, perched, circling, or moving through cover at the edge of your property. A red-tailed hawk sitting motionless on a branch can be nearly invisible until the moment it moves. The birds see it. That's why they stopped. Watch the treetops, watch the fence line, and watch where the birds go when they flee, because the direction of their escape will often point you directly toward whatever spooked them. Most people think of owls as strictly nocturnal, and most owls are. But 2 of the most common species in American backyards are not. The barred owl and the short-eared owl both hunt actively during daylight hours, particularly in the early morning and late afternoon, which happen to be the 2 peak feeding times at your backyard feeder. When a barred owl moves silently through the trees at the edge of your yard, it doesn't announce itself. That's the entire point. Its feathers are specifically structured with soft comb-like edges on the primary flight feathers to produce virtually no sound in flight. It is, from an acoustic standpoint, nearly invisible. But the small birds in your yard know it's there. Birds like chickadees, titmice, and nuthatches have extraordinarily sensitive hearing and respond to the visual silhouette of an owl even at significant distance.
The moment one is spotted, the silence falls. Not because the birds are afraid to react, but because their reaction is the silence itself. There's a secondary behavior worth watching for. After the initial hush, you may hear a short burst of mobbing calls. Chickadees and blue jays in particular will begin scolding loudly once they've assessed the owl's position and determined that collective harassment is safer than total silence. That shift from silence to scolding is itself a signal. It means the predator has been located and the birds have decided to drive it out rather than hide from it. If your yard goes silent and then erupts in agitated calls from one specific tree or corner, go look. There's almost certainly an owl in there. This one surprises people, but it shouldn't. Ground-feeding birds like American robins, mourning doves, dark-eyed juncos, and towhees spend a significant portion of their day reading the ground beneath them, not just visually, through vibration. Research on American robins has confirmed that they can detect earthworm movement beneath the soil surface through vibration-sensitive receptors in their feet. But that same sensitivity that helps them find food also registers everything else moving underground or along the ground surface. A mole moving through a tunnel, a vole crossing beneath leaf layer. Even a large ground beetle can produce enough surface vibration to register to a bird standing still on the grass.
When ground feeders detect unexpected subsurface movement, they freeze, and that freeze response spreads to every other bird in the yard through a combination of body language and the sudden cessation of foraging sounds. It's a subtler silence than a hawk response. The birds don't flee immediately.
They simply stop and stand very still, heads slightly raised, posture rigid, for 15 to 30 seconds before resuming normal behavior. If you notice this specific pattern, a brief, still silence, followed by birds returning to normal without any obvious aerial threat, look at the ground. Whatever moved through it is likely still there. Stay with me because this one is going to change the way you watch your yard before bad weather. Birds are extraordinarily sensitive to barometric pressure. Their hollow bone structure and highly efficient respiratory system make them, in effect, living barometers. Research has documented that many bird species can detect a drop in atmospheric pressure that occurs hours before a storm becomes visible or detectable to human senses. When pressure begins to drop, birds respond in one of two ways depending on the severity of the incoming weather. A mild pressure change produces a feeding frenzy, birds rushing to consume as many calories as possible before conditions deteriorate. But a significant pressure drop, the kind that precedes a major storm system, produces something different, a sudden, eerie quiet. The birds know what's coming, and they begin moving, not fleeing in alarm, but purposefully relocating to sheltered positions, dense shrubs, the interior of thick evergreens, protected spots under eaves or in brush piles. They go quiet because they are transitioning from active behavior to conservation mode. If every bird in your yard disappears and goes completely silent on a day when the sky looks fine, check the weather. Within 6 to 12 hours, conditions will likely change significantly. Your birds are better forecasters than most apps on your phone.
But what comes next is something most people find impossible to believe until it happens in their own yard. Snakes are among the most effective bird silencers in the natural world, not because birds don't see them, but because of exactly how birds respond to them. Unlike hawks, which trigger an immediate explosive scatter response, snakes produce a different kind of alarm. The silence that follows a snake sighting is slower, more deliberate, and profoundly still. Birds that spot a snake, particularly one moving through grass or along a garden border, often freeze completely in place for extended periods, sometimes several minutes, tracking the snake's movement with intense focus before deciding whether to flee or sound an alarm. This freeze and track response has been documented across multiple species and is thought to relate to the snake's hunting strategy. A snake that detects bird movement may redirect toward it, so the birds go motionless and silent. Cornell lab researchers studying bird alarm responses note that snake-related silences tend to be accompanied by downward gaze, birds looking toward the ground rather than upward as they would for an aerial predator. If you notice your yard birds suddenly still and staring at the ground or a specific area of vegetation, the cause is far more likely to be a snake than anything overhead. Most backyard snakes in North America are completely harmless to humans and actually beneficial. They control rodent populations that would otherwise raid your feeders. But that doesn't mean your birds know that. If you've made it this far, this one is going to make you look at your feeder completely differently. Not every silence is caused by a predator. Some silences are caused by a stranger. Bird communities have social structures that are invisible to us but intensely real to them. The birds that visit your yard regularly have established a hierarchy, a known order of who eats first, who defers to who occupies which branch. That order is maintained through constant low-level communication, chips, contact calls, positional signals. When an unfamiliar bird arrives, particularly a larger or more dominant species, that entire communication system pauses. The regulars go quiet and still as they assess the newcomer. Is it a threat? A competitor? Will it take over the feeder? Will it drive off the established birds? The silence lasts until the social calculation is complete. If the new bird is accepted or moves on, normal sounds resume. If it establishes dominance, as blue jays, European starlings, and brown-headed cowbirds often do, the silence may be followed by a reshuffling of the entire yard's social order. Watch what happens after the silence breaks. Which birds return first tells you everything about your yard's hierarchy and the new arrival's place in it.
I saved this one for last because it is the one that stays with people. Human hearing is remarkable in many ways, but compared to the birds in your yard, we are functionally deaf to an entire register of the world around us. Birds can detect frequencies both above and below the human range of hearing. Some species can hear infrasound, low-frequency sound waves produced by distant storms, geological activity, and large animal movement at distances that would seem physically impossible. Research on bird navigation and communication has documented that certain species use infrasonic cues to orient themselves across thousands of miles.
But that same sensitivity that guides a migratory warbler across a continent also registers events happening far beyond anything a human standing in the same yard could perceive. When your yard goes completely silent and there is no visible predator, no incoming storm, no snake, no new bird, and the silence lasts longer than it should, the birds may be responding to something moving or happening at a distance you cannot see and a frequency you cannot hear. This is not speculation, it is documented sensory biology. What they heard you will never know, but they heard it, and for those few moments, every bird in your yard was tuned to a frequency of the world that we don't have access to. That silence isn't empty. It's full of something we simply don't have the equipment to receive. Have you ever been in your yard when everything went silent at once? Did you ever figure out what caused it? Tell me in the comments. I read every one, and some of the stories people share about these moments are the ones that stay with me longest. I'll see you in the next one.